We continue our story on the barren planet of Cybertron, where it's really all going to come to an end pretty soon. The place where it all started, and the place where it honestly ends. We go to Iacon, a city with very little power. Wait a minute, there's power. There's bots here? Wait a minute, what's going on? But this is where we actually see a space bridge open. And the remaining Autobot forces, Optimus, Magnus, RC, Ratchet, Knockout, and the Dinobots, all pretty much wandering there. And they actually notice that immediately. And Ultra Magnus is quite confused. I thought there was no one here. They evacuated every Autobot off the planet. However, this is where they hear a voice stating, not all of them. And this is where they actually see Chromia. And she actually, kind of gets into her more serious demeanor where, seeing Ultra Magnus, Grimlock, and Optimus, her commanders, obviously. And Optimus tells her to, be at ease here. And she actually states that she's been on this planet with her friends for a while under one of his lieutenants. Into which Optimus is, still kind of in like a mournful mood. Keep in mind, it's not been too long since he lost Bumblebee, Wheeljack, and Bulkhead to the likes of Megatron. And Chromia is kind of curious because she thought the team would be bigger. Into which RC simply tells her that, well, her and Ratchet are actually the last members of the original Team Prime, with Magnus and now with Knockout as well. However, this is where they hear other voices telling them that, well, that sucks. Can we join? This is where Ironhide, Jazz, and Air Raid actually show up. With Jazz actually stating he actually came back to Cybertron to help out some of the Autobots that were still remaining. So, yeah, he's been kind of keeping things, or pretty much holding things down for at the moment. And Air Raid himself actually states that it's actually nice to see that the other Autobots are here. But this is where Optimus does begins to explain to them what happened and how everything's been going on. And this is where Ultra Magnus simply points out that since they have power, they have the ability to at least get some of their equipment and weapons up and running for this plan. To which Ironhide is like, wait, what plan are you guys talking about here? I mean, sure, we still have one more member that still needs to be kind of awakened. To which he points to one of the Autobot transports. And this is where he states, yeah, this big guy's been sentient for quite a while, but again, he doesn't have enough power. And he doesn't even know if they can even bring him online with the power they have now. And to which Ratchet simply states, well, lucky for you, we have a couple things that might work. And this is where they actually see canisters, or at least a giant container containing multiple canisters of synthetic energon. And this is where Chromia explains that this could help considering the situation. They've been dealing with the remnants of the Decepticon army, or at least the remnants of Shockwave's Decepticon army, that being the Forge, under the command of his Predacon, Ripclaw. And she's been vicious here. They haven't been able to really get a solid foothold in the war, and have only been playing defense, driving them out of Iacon with even the threat of their miniature Titan friend over there. And this is where Ultra Magnus simply states, okay, so what's the plan? And this is where Jazz simply states that they actually haven't been able to get a plan really going right now. So far, they've just been playing defense, playing hit and run tactics to get them to flee, and it's barely been working. To which this is where Ratchet and Knockout actually suggest that they use the synthetic energon formula to bring everything back online. Possibly even getting their friend over there back online. And this is where Ultra Magnus simply points out that isn't the synthetic energon, unstable? However, this is where Grimlock simply states, well, if Snarl's prediction is correct, into which Snarls kind of chimes in, it is. Considering the area is so big and massive, it may actually stabilize the synthetic energon rather than letting it, kind of remain volatile in a cramped space or in a small containment. And so this is where Optimus states, good, then let's get this done. And this is where we head over to Kaon with Megatron's Cybertron base there. And he has a meeting with Shockwave, Kickback, who's leading the remaining Insecticons in Cybertron, then Ripclaw, Skylynx, and Darksteel, with Ripclaw simply stating that she has actually done wonders in his absence and shows that she's turned the entire army in the Forge, into Leapers, one of the deadliest variants, or if not the deadliest variant in Fall of Cybertron, considering how annoying they can be. And Megatron praises her for this achievement and simply states that good, since you are in command of them, you will actually remain in command. And I will be delegating the Predacons to you. Meanwhile, Kickback is officially made the commander of the Insecticons, considering he has been doing that for some time. To which he does bow to Megatron and state that this is a wondrous occasion. But keep in mind, Skylynx and Darksteel feel cheated out of this. They thought they were going to be the ones to lead their race into the future, being able to guide the Predacons towards a new age, a new dawn. But here they are getting cheated out of it because Megatron found someone else more favorable. But this is where a loud explosion is heard, and Kickback simply runs towards the edge and tells Megatron that he's going to want to see this. This is the perfect opportunity to end the war. And this is where Megatron simply looks over, and he looks in absolute disbelief. He knew the Autobots were courageous, brave, borderline insane sometimes in his own eyes. But to see Optimus and Grimlock standing at the foot of his base, with Optimus and Grimlock, or with the both of them, tearing through the Insecticons, any Viacons there on Cybertron, and the Leapers, and some of the Predacons as well. And Megatron is absolutely livid at this. He thinks he should go down there and take care of himself, but this is where Ripclaw simply interjects, "No, no, my lord. Allow me to handle the Dinobots, while the Prime is yours." To which she descends down and tells her Predacon army to attack. But this is the opening that Grimlock was waiting for. Getting the strongest enemy forces out immediately, drawing them towards him. And Optimus with the Star Saber actually does kill a good chunk of the armies. The Predacons, the Insecticons, and some of the Leapers as well, while Grimlock simply is able to kill at least a good chunk by himself. And this is where he tells Optimus, "This is your opportunity, now go." To which Optimus spreads his newly repaired wings and simply asks, "Are you sure about this?" To which he simply states, "Yes, get into the base, get what we came for, and you'll be fine. And we'll go to the next phase of the plan." To which this is where Grimlock begins thrashing around and butchering multiple, and I mean multiple, Decepticons. Everyone just being stabbed, gutted, killed. Predacons come charging in. He grabs them in his T-Rex form and crushes their skulls and thrashes them into the other. Skylynx and Darksteel try to jump, but he tail whips them away. Everything is just a rampage, a calculated rampage, while Optimus flies into Megatron's base and actually blasts through, I guess you could say, a couple Insecticons in there, and he makes his way to another chamber. Meanwhile, Grimlock himself, back on the surface, or back in the battlefield itself, he now has his sword and shield out, and actually begins slicing through the remaining of them. However, this is where Ripclaw simply tells them to stop. Now that you have been sufficiently tired out here, I will be dealing with you personally. And keep in mind, Skylynx and Darksteel to take note that she just used the army to tire out their opponent, instead of just fighting him herself honorably. And this is where Optimus makes his way to a chamber containing two minicons, experiments of Shockwave, able to give someone unimaginable power, this being Aerobolt and Sawtooth. To which, this is where Optimus and Aerobolt do have a conversation, where Aerobolt is pretty much familiar with Optimus Prime and understands he's the symbol of hope and purity. But he senses that right now he has so much loss, so much grieving. And he can understand that. He's lost a few of his companions to themselves because Shockwave deemed them weaker than the others. However, this is where Megatron appears and simply states, "Oh, wow. Aerobolts. Perhaps when this is over, I shall acquire your power as well. And this is where Optimus simply draws the Star Saber and simply states, Megatron, you will pay for what you did on Earth. But this is where Optimus takes his free hand, right? And makes it into a fusion can, his ion blaster, and then he points it at Megatron, who's actually ready to withstand it. But he switches up and blasts the chamber that contains both Sawtooth and Aerobolt. And Aerobolt tells Sawtooth to run, go, get to the other one he's talked about. And this is where Sawtooth simply nods and actually runs off. However, Megatron tries to grab him, but Optimus rams into him at full speed. And this is where Optimus utilizes the Star Saber to cut a path for Sawtooth to get to the lower battlefield a lot quicker. Meanwhile, this is where Aerobolt flies at Optimus and merges with him, giving him Power Surge, or a Power Surge in general. But again, considering this is called Power Surge Optimus, I'm not even sure what a good name for it. Maybe Aerobolt Optimus or Sonic Wing Mode or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what to call this version of Optimus, except just Power Surge Optimus. But again, that just sounds longer, right? And so he actually begins to beat down Megatron. Megatron himself has never been on the receiving end of this. He thought he was invincible. He thought he was dominant, more dominant than Optimus. But again, he's getting ragdolled, thrown around, blasted back. He tries his dragon form, doesn't work. So Megatron uses the only thing he can at this point, deception. You see, while he's on the floor, bladdered and injured, he states, "You could kill me, but it might take you forever, Prime. And who knows, maybe by the time that happens, your precious Autobots could have been invaded by my secret forces." To which Optimus contemplates for a moment. And this is where, back on the battlefield, we see Grimlock and Circuit clashing. Grimlock is still stronger, able to absolutely damage and deck her a couple times, but he's tired, he's waning. He's fought through an entire horde here. And keep in mind, Skylynx and Darksteel are in the back, simply contemplating, what the heck are they doing? What the heck are they even witnessing? It's not their way. It's not how the Predacon way should be. And this is where we actually see Sawtooth sneak through the crowd, and as Grimlock simply hits the ground, he actually takes the opportunity just to, like, you know what? He's going to follow me. Might as well give him into it here. And this is where he actually merges with Grimlock, turning him into his Fire Blast state. So yeah, another appearance from Fire Blast Grimlock here. And he feels exhilarated, more powerful than what he was before. And utilizing this newfound power, he beats Circuit down and kills her. However, this is where Optimus states it's time to go, and Grimlock simply states, yeah, good. And simply, takes Optimus's hand and flies off. And this is where he simply asks if he killed Megatron. To which Optimus does admit he didn't. And Grimlock kind of is just like, of course you didn't. But look, we got what we needed, and you're looking stronger than what you did before. And so, this is where they head back to Iacon. All the Autobots are amazed by their new power-up, courtesy of their Minicon companions now. However, Optimus does ask, what's the next phase of this plan? To which Grimlock simply states, now that they have the power-up they need, they can actually hold a strong defense against the Decepticons, and eventually end this war. However, he tells Optimus right now he needs to be the one to go into space and get the Allspark. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends, and I will see you guys for the finale.